It's such a pleasure and honor to welcome to Living Histories Professor Jessica Hoover. Please take it away, Jessica, and tell us about Living Histories.
Sure. Thank you for having me. This is a really fun experience to put this together and think about my career path. Um, I'm currently at the University at Buffalo in Buffalo, New York, which is where I was born. Um, Tell you, like, I kind of started as a um, started. I was born here in Buffalo, but I quickly moved to Wisconsin so my father could go to seminary. He's a minister. Um, and as you can tell, I tried to give you some pictures here of where I started, where I grew up, where I live now. Um, I live quite rurally and have my whole life. Here I am at age 4 in Wisconsin with my sister. We're out riding bikes. Um, and I think growing up outside and in the woods and as a kind of like a liking to get into the dirt and do things helped me be grounded in nature and has really helped my mental health as I've gotten older. I've stayed very close to my family. So here's me and my brother and my sister at a wedding that we attended together, but we're very, very close. And moving back to this region of Western New York has been great, getting to be close to my family. And while I love being in rural school districts, I think one thing that they don't have is we didn't have a lot of special classes. We didn't have AP classes. It was just, basic regular classes. But I had some really good teachers. I had a fourth grade teacher who kind of ignited my love of science by we hatched chicks, the usual fourth grade thing. You put the chicks into the um, incubator and they hatch. Well, some don't hatch. And she gave us a chance to look at the chicks if we wanted to with her that didn't hatch and see why. And I did that. And I just found biology so fascinating. Like that was early. I had a really great teacher in middle school who taught me to code. So by the time I got to high school, I could code in 3 different computer languages, and my love for coding never went away. So I had it while I was in rural school districts, I had a lot of support. But I think what I didn't realize is how much I think when I went to college, I kind of was still thinking, like, I can't do those things. I can't do the science. I can't do um, the computers. I need to do something else. I really loved reading. And so when I was in undergrad, I went to a small liberal arts college and did an English degree. And I did, this is my professor who oversaw my bachelor's degree thesis. Um, and I studied Zora Neale Hurston. And this was really big for me, showing me I could do science, I could do hard analytical writing. So I compared Zora Neale Hurston's fictional book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, and the main character, Janie, in that book with her autobiography, Dust Tracks on the Road, thinking about how the author's search for her voice paralleled the main character's search for her voice and learning to speak for themselves. And for me, that was probably what I took out of my undergraduate degree more than anything is learning who I was and what I liked. I also had a part-time job in the Writing Center, which is where this lovely picture with my professor was taken. I tutored middle school students in the inner city of Rochester, New York. And what I learned there is that I really like teaching. I really like working with people who needed assistance, needed resources. Most of the people I worked with in the Writing Center were second language learners who are learning to function in English academically, and I really loved that work. So I thought I wanted to do something in English, and I applied for an English degree, and I was denied for the PhD program. So I kind of pivoted. What am I going to do? I started working. I worked as an aide in a day treatment program for people with cerebral palsy. I worked as a secretary at a security company. And I kind of learned that when I was working with the people with cerebral palsy, I had this um, supervisor. She was a speech language pathologist, and she provided the people I worked with were mostly nonverbal. So they couldn't say what they wanted, they couldn't direct their own lives. And what she did is she gave them augmentative communication devices so that they could express what they wanted, they could make choices. And she involved me in using those in the classroom. And I really fell in love with that. So while I worked as a secretary at a security company and eventually became the sales manager for that company, I hated being in business. I just didn't like the ethos of that. Um, and so while I learned a lot of administrative skills that have served me well, I kind of figured out that wasn't my thing. And I taught English and business at night school at the same time and learned that while I didn't like teaching high school kids, I loved teaching adult learners. And so for me, this journey of self-discovery, I feel like sometimes we come out as students with this idea, like I'm going to do A, and that will take me this many years, and then I'll do B, and then I'll do C, and we have, a decade planned out, and we try to execute that. But I think there's value in doing some searching and thinking about what you want to do. And so what I ended up doing was I quit my full-time job, which was a quite lucrative job, and I went to graduate school to be a speech language pathologist here at the University at Buffalo. Um, and while I thought for sure I wanted to be a clinician. I started my clinical degree, and while doing my clinical degree, I was interacting with my professors who were scientists, and that love of science, it just never went away, and it kept sticking its head up. And one of my professors, Elaine Stefopoulos, told me what she did. She said, "So I come in, I teach. I also get to spend a lot of time in my lab," and talked about her research that she did in her lab. And I thought, that's like the perfect job. You can teach and you can do science. Um, at the same time, I was finishing up my clinical training, and I thought some of it was really exciting, but the parts that I loved were the parts that were most like research. And so I felt that I needed to stay again, make another pivot. And I stayed here at the University at Buffalo for my PhD. And that was, in looking back, a really important decision and helped set me on a path where I have the job that I love. And so when I started my research, it was pretty basic. So I was looking at how the respiratory system responded to pressure and airflow, how it supported speech production, how it reduced the effort of speech production. And I love that. But as I got to know patients more through my clinical training and through my research, started to work with people with Parkinson's disease, I started to feel more connected to the patient. So I started studying Parkinson's disease because it's a really great model for respiratory difficulties, speech difficulties, and particularly speech difficulties that are related to the respiratory system. And this is something that we really didn't know much about when I started my work. But once I started working with patients, it all changed for me. And all of those theoretical ideas and things I wanted to study, kind of like the basic science, kind of took a back seat to figuring out how to help these patients. Like, how do I make life better for people living with speech disorders? And so I have some pictures here. I have a picture of this, as flowers bloom, so does hope. That was from my graduate students, got that picture taken of one of my first patients that I ever worked with. That's her hand. Tulips are the flower for Parkinson's disease, and this hangs in my home office. They got this for my 40th birthday, which was so sweet of them. And it reminds me why I do what I do. And early in this path, I was kind of looking for what can we do to do better with these patients. And I knew as a speech pathologist, what we usually do is we bring them into the therapy room and we teach them to talk differently And the way that we teach them to talk differently is we use different cues. And one of the primary goals of therapy with Parkinson's disease is to make patients louder so they're audible because they tend to get really quiet. And so I looked at some cues that we use in speech therapy, like this in this graph, I have the measure of their loudness that's called sound pressure level. And I have some bars here. I asked people who had Parkinson's disease and people who were age and sex match to talk just at their normal, comfortable level. Then I also asked them, used a cue that we use a lot in therapy, which is this purple bar. Talk twice as loud as you think you are uncomfortable to see how they manage that. I used another context cue that we use in speech therapy. I used a meter. They could see the number and I asked them to target a certain number. That's this orange bar. And then I tried something unique that we don't use. I used noise. And noise is an interesting cue because noise is an automatic cue for all of us. You know, if you're at a loud restaurant, you will talk louder, you will talk slower, and you will talk clearer. And by some level of intervention, people with Parkinson's disease have problems in all three of those domains. And so I thought I would look at this cue to see if it performed better. And you can see in our patients, it does perform better. They do talk louder in the noise than in the other two cues, probably because we do this from childhood. This is a reflex. We don't think about it. We've all had that experience. We're at a loud place, we're talking loud, someone turns off the music, and now we're shouting, and we didn't even realize it. And so the patients reported that talking in noise was easier for them than the other two cues. We looked at how their body functioned, and their body functioned more typically under that cue than the other ones. And I invented something called the Speech5 device. And this device is now available through the VA and through Medicare, and is a culminating experience in my life where I got to really help people. So patients can wear this device and have immediate improvement in their speech. At the same time, I was kind of doing this concurrent path. I also became an administrator in addition to being a researcher. And I've held a lot of administrative responsibilities. And I think that I enjoy these because I get to make things better for other people. Sorry. And then the last little bit of advice I have relates to that idea of being unsure if you fit in this space. And when I looked at what a professor was, when I was becoming a professor, I looked at myself and I wasn't any of the things a professor was. I like the outdoors. I like camping. I like disc golfing. I'm kind of a geek. And I hid a lot of who I was from the people I worked with because I didn't feel confident that I fit the mold. And I think it's been really nice to learn that it doesn't matter and to show who I am, even though I don't fit the mold. And I found a lot of academics that are like me. So just encourage any new academics, like people who are thinking about going into this field and don't feel like they fit. It's okay to be different, and then you'll find your group. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Jessica, for generously sharing this living histories with us. I want to start with a question building off of the slide you had with all of these different career experiences that you gathered on your way to figuring out where you wanted to be over the longer term. Would you please share with us your sense during those different jobs for the probability that you would end up where you are now?
Zero. I would say if you had said to me when I was working as a day treatment aide, doing toileting and feeding and, working with people who were nonverbal, would I believe that I was going to have a PhD someday? No one in my family had a PhD. I would never have thought that. I really just had to take each opportunity for itself as it went along, and understand that life can take paths that you don't anticipate. And I try to tell my students that, like, it's okay if you didn't think you'd be here, it's still okay to be here now. And so I hope that students do let themselves find their own path.
Thank you. One more question. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts and ask a sharp question, but it's taking me time. Um, would you please speak to the trade-offs involved in being loud and sharing who you are at the risk of sharing how different you are?
It is the risks are immense. It's scary to do it. It's scary to do it, particularly when you don't fit the mold for what people expect. But the freedom I felt inside my own skin has really helped me mitigate my fear of the risk. And this really started when I was an administrator, and um, I felt like I had to be a certain person to be an administrator, and I learned that wasn't me. I had to be me as an administrator, and that then meant I had to be me as a researcher. It meant I had to be me in every space I entered, because it was important for other people to see that you don't have to be, you know, a particular, there's not a cookie cutter way that academics are a cookie cutter way to help people. And I hope that when I make myself real in academia, I give other people the cue that it's safe, with at least with me, to be who you want to be. But you do have to, as a junior person and a young person, you have to really think about those things as you do them, and find your safe spots.
Thank you again. In the interest of time, I'm closing